a fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1958. So, first of all, I want to say a huge heartfelt thank you to everybody who reached out regarding Zephy and what was going on with her after last night's broadcast, after last night's podcast. And so I thought I'd come on and give everybody an update because there's been so many people commenting on the post from last night. There's been so many people who have reached out privately, through text, through messages, through phone calls and everything. And so here we are with the official update. Where are you? Oh, she's over here. Hang on. She's right there. Right there. The upshot is that after yesterday's thing, she was having tests done, blood work was being taken and tested and everything else when I did the podcast last night. No idea what was going on. For a quick recap, for those who are catching up with everything, last night around 6:20, Zephy went into a full seizure. She was laying right there on the recliner with her head up on the far arm, and she was just drooling and foaming at the mouth. Her tongue was sticking out. She had this very weird wet breathing sound, sloshing sound coming out of her mouth. She was in full stiffness, and I was in the family room and I heard this noise. I was like, what the heck's that noise? So I came looking and I was calling out to her. She wasn't responding. I came looking for her. Now this office has two doors. One's right here and the one behind me. And so when I was at the intersection in the kitchen, which goes down the hallway, there's a short hallway here that connects with that hallway, or I can come into the living room behind me and come into the office that way. When I was at that thing, I was trying to figure out which direction it was coming from. I figured I'd go into the office and have a look. I came in, it was dark in here. I turned the light on, I turned around, and Zephy's laying there with foam coming out of her mouth and there's weird breathing going on. Her eyes were massive and she was completely stiff. Her tongue was sticking out of her mouth and she was doing this wet panting sound thing. It was kind of gross. I didn't panic at all. I just dropped on my knees in front of her and just started stroking her and talking to her calmly. And even with one hand, I had it on her foot and I was massaging her foot with one hand while stroking her body with the other hand, just helping her to calm down and just talking to her calmly and just breathing calmly myself. Because a lot of times I find that if for whatever reason she gets into a panic mode, if I calm down and calm my breathing down, she starts copying me. And so that's basically what we did. I didn't try to hug her or anything. I was just sitting there looking her straight in the eye, even though she probably couldn't really see me. But I just wanted to be the first face that she saw when she started coming out of it. What was funny? It wasn't funny at the time. Well, it kind of sort of was, is that as she started coming out of it and she'd start licking her nose and pulling her tongue back in and shaking her head like she was coming out of it, I said, okay, now that you're coming out of this, we're going to wait a couple of minutes and then I'm going to go and call the vet. The moment I said vet, she goes back into her seizure mode with her tongue sticking out, the hard breathing coming in. And I'm just sitting there talking to her calmly. After a few minutes, she calms down again. And this whole thing probably took about 5, maybe 10 minutes. It seemed a long time at the time, but I'm thinking back, it probably only was about 5 minutes, closer to 5 minutes that this whole episode went on. And whenever she came out of it, I mentioned going and calling the vet and she would go back into her seizure mode. So I'm not sure if the word vet was triggering the recap of it or it was just part of her coming out of it process. But we finally got to an emergency vet number. Well, I actually called one that was here in Surprise, but they closed at 9 o'clock and gave me the number of a 24/7 one, which I then called and they says, yep, come on in. And they were about 16, I think they're like 16 to 20 miles, somewhere between 16 and 20 miles away from us. So it took us about 35 minutes to get over there and in the dark. And I don't drive well at night. I have issues with night vision. But I managed to get her over there safely and we got back home safely. And so they took her in and put a catheter into her arm, into her front paw so that if she had another seizure, they could immediately administer seizure medication, anti-seizure medication. They helped me get her out of the car because I left her laying. I actually had to carry her into the car. She was out of it at that point. But while I was on the phone with the emergency vet, she comes walking out of the office and goes into her drunk mode, which is getting all floppy, feet crossing over, back end swaying. And then she got to an area in the breakfast area where because she was on the tile, her feet just gave out from underneath her, and she ended up just laying just straight down on all fours and basically laying how she is right now. And then all of a sudden she just flopped over onto her side. I don't know if she was trying to get up or what, but she just flopped over on her side and she just stayed there. And so I had to go and get her harness to get that on so I could belt her into the car, because if anything happened in a car wreck, I didn't want her to go flying out of the car in the condition that she was in. And so I put the harness on her as best I could, buckled up one side, then picked up her legs, slid her over towards me, flipped her over, and she didn't even fight me for it or anything. Usually she does fight me when I do something like that with her, and got the other side buckled up. But when I went to try and pick her up, she's trying to stand up, but only on her front half. Her back half just stayed still. And so I finally got her up in my arms, went out to the car. I had the car door kind of open, enough where I could push it open, because I had to walk past the car door to come back to it, because I couldn't walk around the back of the car to get to the door. And so got her situated in the back, got her buckled in, and then we got in the car and we went off to the animal vet place. And I told her, I said, you got to stay here while I go and check you in, because there was no way I didn't even know how the doors operated or anything, and I had to carry her in because she wasn't walking at that point. And so I went and got her all checked in, got all that stuff done. And then I went out I said, I'm going to go out to the car and get her. And they said, oh, do you need any hand? I said, I just need a hand with the door, getting the door open. And they said, oh, we can take care of that. But they ended up sending a tech out there who took Zephy out of, when I was getting her out of the car and got her in my arms, the tech took Zephy out of my arms and verified that it was okay for them to put the catheter in to administer meds if needed. I said, yep, that's fine. And so I got the car locked up and followed them in, and they took her out back, and then I had to fill out all the paperwork. There was like 4 pages of paperwork to fill out. So and I was checking her in at 7:20. So it's been an hour since her seizure, and she was pretty out of it. She didn't even notice that she had been handed off to somebody else. She didn't even make a sound when we were driving over there. Then they eventually came and got me and took me back to one of the exam rooms where the vet came in and talked with me. She brought a scribe with her to scribe the notes of our meeting and interaction, because they were asking me questions about how it had happened, what had happened leading up to it, and all of that sort of stuff. I explained the wobbly back end thing, how she gets a little drunk at times, and it's only when we're out walking in the mornings. And then I said, and then she switched from mornings to evenings, and I said, I've had to shorten down our walks to try and prevent her from going this. I said, but she's determined. When she starts wobbling, she puts her head down and she just keeps on walking. Like, she ain't stopping for nobody. Even if I try to pull her back, she keeps walking. And so they took that into account as well. They then went and did a full blood workup on her. They had checked her vitals. Everything was fine. Her vitals were looking really good. They went and did a whole bunch of complete blood workup of her. And they said it's going to take 1 to 2 hours. And then you have the option at the end of leaving her here for 24 hours for observation, or you can take her home and monitor her for 24 hours. And I says, I want to take her home. I says, I'm not going to sleep if she's here. I would rather have her with me interrupting my sleep than not knowing what's going on, because I'm not going to sleep with her here, not knowing what's happening with her. And yeah, I said, that's just not going to work. And so they said, well, go off and get something. I said, you can go back home. I says, yeah, no. I said, it's like 35 minutes to get here. It's going to take me the same amount of time to get home. Then I got to turn around and come back again. I said, no. I said, I am going to go and find somewhere in the car to do my podcast, and then I will come back. So that's what I was doing last night. I wanted to just go and sit in the car at the animal hospital to do it there, but I had barely 1 bar. And so I got in the car and I'm driving along. I suddenly realized I didn't have my glasses on. I need my glasses to drive. I did not have my glasses on. But I saw a parking lot that was well lit, and it was across the road. And I'm watching the bars because the phone was sitting up here on my dashboard, and the thing was still on because it's ready to do a podcast. And I'm watching the bars, and I got to 3 very strong bars, and I thought, okay, that'll do. And I found an empty parking lot that was well lit, so I went and backed in over there, and that's where I did my podcast from last night. At that point, we had no idea what was going on with Zephy, no idea what had caused the seizures or anything else. And so after I did the podcast, I went back to the animal hospital, and I sat in there and was busy replying to text messages from my parents and from concerned friends, and other people that were sending in, because I was also replying to birthday wishes that had come in as well. I mean, a great way to spend your birthday in the ER at an animal clinic. And so so that took up a lot of time responding to people's text messages coming in, because I was still getting text messages and phone calls and Facebook messages and private messages on Instagram and private messages on TikTok, and all of them just wishing me happy birthday and everything else. And I must say, I am so grateful for every single message, phone call, however you communicated with me yesterday for my birthday. Thank you very much. I truly, truly appreciated it. It kept my spirits up. Even though I was concerned for Zephy, it kept my spirits up. I didn't at any point in time panic. I knew she was going to be okay. I just had that feeling. And this is probably going to sound really weird, but a lot of people have been, when she had the seizure, I just put out a message to my mastermind group saying, hey, I need prayers for Zephy right now. I'm on my way to the emergency vet place. She just had a seizure. We're off. And I quickly sent a quick text message to my parents to let them know what was going on, and to my boys. And so 3 quick messages went out like that. A lot of prayers going on, a lot of good thoughts coming in for her, positive thoughts and everything else. And they made that. And I knew that she was going to be okay. I later on, when thinking about it on the drive home, I thought this was divine intervention, because she was having the swaying issue. I was do I take her to the vet? Do I not take her to the vet? And then she goes and has a seizure, which forced me to take her to the vet so they could diagnose what the problem was. And we've been there an hour and a half, I think it was, when I got called back to the exam room. And so went and sat in there, and the vet came in and says, okay, the blood work's back in. There is nothing in the blood work that indicates why the seizure occurred. I'm like, okay. She said, so that's an issue. She says, that's kind of a problem, because I don't know what caused the seizure. And I'm like, okay. So she says, she's very much of a puzzle, your puppy. And I went, yeah, she is. But she talked about her blood work. She said her blood sugar levels are a little on the low side, but nothing to be concerned about. Everything else looks good, but she does have a raging UTI. And I was like, oh, really? And she says, yeah. I said, well, that's kind of weird. I said, that's kind of funny. She goes, what do you mean kind of funny? I said, I have had 3 people in the last 7 days tell me that she's got a bladder infection. And they're like, really? I says, yeah, because I was out walking, doing our normal morning walks and stuff. And there's people that we meet along the way. In front of one person, she did a little wobbly thing. And that person says, oh, she's got a bladder infection. I'm like, no, she's peeing fine. And I said, her peeing habits hadn't changed at all or anything else. And this is where I learned a very interesting thing about female dogs. The older they get, the longer they will hold it. And so you have to allow female dogs more breaks outside and I said, no more breaks to go pee. I said, okay, we haven't a problem with that one. She said, what's that? I said, unless it's the middle of the night, Zephy will not pee or poop in her own yard. I said, it was the same when we were living in the RV. We'd get into the RV slot and she wouldn't go and she does this with houses as well. She won't pee or poop within 3 houses of our place, and she won't pee or poop within 3 RV sites if we're in a campground. And the vet looked at me and went, really? I said, yeah. I said, unless it's the middle of the night, then she has no problem with it. And so she just starts laughing. I said, I can't explain it. She just started doing it from the very first night I got her. She wanted out in the middle of the night, and so she peed close by. But then when it came to the next day, when she indicated she wanted out, we had to walk 3 sites away, and from that day on, she wouldn't do it within 3 sites unless it was the middle of the night. And she said, isn't that funny? I said, yeah, that's just how she is. So they gave her, what are you doing? What are you getting into? Hey, mischief? So they gave her a dose of antibiotics last night before I brought her home. And after I talked with her, I have to keep her quiet for the next 7 days. Come here. Come here. You want to come up and say hi? Come here. Come here. No, you can't sit that way. I can't grab you that way. Come here. Come on. I know. You want scratches. Come here. You can come up and say hi to everybody so they can see just how good you're looking. See, look how clever you are and how smart you're looking. So they gave her a dose of antibiotics, then went and did the discharge thing, and about 15 minutes later, we were out of there. By 10:30, we were on the road home again. We got home just after 11 and I hadn't eaten. So I was like hungry. She was hungry because she hadn't had dinner either. And she was feeling a little better, still a little out of it, but she sat up for most of the ride on the way home. And once we got home, she went straight to her food bowl. Well, yeah, went straight to her food bowl and had a big feed of her food that was sitting in the food bowl. And then we eventually went to bed. It was 11:59 when we got into bed last night. No, ain't no sweetie girl. I'll tell you what she wants. She wants her advent calendar treat. I'll tell you a funny story about that one in a minute. And so I have to give her food before she can have her medication because it'll upset her stomach if there's no food in her stomach. She's got to have it twice a day. And she's so funny. And we both slept very well last night. No issues, no disturbances in the middle of the night or anything. She was a little reluctant to get out of bed this morning, but once I got up and got moving, she decided to follow suit. And we went for a walk. Just as we're getting home again, she started slowing down, and that had always been an indicator that she was about to go into drunk mode. So just as we're walking into the driveway, she starts slowing down and her back feet start dragging. So got her inside and she went over to a water bowl, had a big drink, had something to eat, and then just went and lay down and slept for a bit. But she had I gave her a medication before we left on the walk, and then I got breakfast, and that was our day done. And then later on, I made myself some eggs, and so I cooked her an egg first, and so she got her egg and devoured that. I didn't realize how much food was left in a bowl till later on. And I'd started working on the help chat, on my afternoon shift on the help chat, and I could hear this noise. And I thought, what? And I thought, is that her advent calendar? Because I'd actually found her in the pantry earlier that day with her feet up on the second shelf in the pantry, her front feet up. And there's a cart that I have in my pantry, which has some of her stuff on it. And the advent calendar lays on the top, and it's too long to fit flat on the cart. So the end closest to where she was up on the handle, resting on the handle of the cart. And so I caught her in there and I go, what are you doing? And she just looks at it and she's trying to get the cart because I could hear the rattle of the treats. And I said to her, what are you doing? And she jumps down and says, you get out of there. And she very rarely goes into the pantry. But she knew where her advent treats were kept. And so I says, no, that's not till this evening, till after the podcast. And so she was sort of like, just walks off and goes and lays down and goes back to sleep. And, but then when I was on the help chat this afternoon, I hear this thunk and this rattly thunk. And I thought, she's been at the advent calendar again. And I go into the pantry, and the advent calendar is laying on the floor. She can't get into it, but it was laying on the floor. And I was sort of like, well, why aren't you? I says, you had lunch, you've had an egg, you've had breakfast. And I go over and look at her bowl, and it's basically full of all of her food. She hadn't eaten anything out of what I'd given her when we got back from the walk. And so I looked at her and she just looks at me. And what she was waiting for is I have this dried beef liver powder. They call it sprinkles, and that you just sprinkle over the top of the food. And I had done that on a little bit of food to get her to eat it so I could give her meds. Well, she's had it once. She wanted it again so she could then eat the food that was in her bowl because she wouldn't eat it. It didn't smell right. It didn't have her sprinkles on it. So one time, that's all it takes with this dog. One time, and she expects it every time. So I put a few sprinkles on there, and she quite happily ate most of her food. She does like to leave it a little bit because she gets peckish throughout the day. And she knows when her treat times are and all of that sort of thing. So, but she's basically been back to normal since that second dose of medication. And she had her, excuse me. She's had her second dose for today about an hour ago. But yeah, she's been almost 100% normal as far as her personality and everything goes, with her directing what she wants. Now she wants her advent treat. And so she knows she gets it after the show. So I said, right, showtime, let's go do the show. And so she follows me in because she knows as soon as we're finished here, she gets to have her treat. And so I get to have my chocolate truffle advent treat. She gets to have her natural chicken treat. So that's where we're at with her. So she's doing really well so far. In a week's time, I have to go and follow up with either take her back to the emergency vet so they can do a follow-up blood work on her to see how the infection is going, whether it's completely gone, or if there's more medication that's needed. Is the medication actually working? or I take her to her regular vet and get them to do the same blood work and all of that. So we're in the process of getting all of that sorted out, and that's basically her update. She's doing well. She's recovering well. And I couldn't be more grateful for the team that was at the emergency center. They were absolutely wonderful, and took great care of her, and very accommodating and everything else. They were just fantastic. Just not enough words can convey my gratitude to them for what they did to help with Zephy, and she's now playing with her toy. And so I can't be thankful. I cannot express my gratitude enough to them for the work that they did to get Zephy taken care of and everything else. But on the way home, I had the thought that this was divine intervention, through all the prayers and everything else, about those that had known about some of the issues that Zephy had been having with her walking and that sort of stuff. And because I was, do I not take her? And then she has the seizure, and I'm like, okay, this is the message from the universe, whichever deities you believe in, whatever your belief is. Mine is God and his angels. I believe it was God and his angels that got her to have put her through the seizure, so that I would then be forced to take her to the vet where the UTI was found and could be taken care of. But Zephy never once looked like she was in pain or complained about any pain or anything else. I said, what symptoms would I have been seeing that would lead to me to believe that she had a UTI? She says, absolutely none. I says, what do you mean? She says, well, unless she was peeing, was she peeing more frequently? I says, no. I says, we go out for a walk. She pees in multiple places to leave her mark everywhere. She'll sniff a new smell. She'll go pee on it. Everything that a dog normally does. She says, was she ever straining to pee? I says, no. I says, no more than she normally does. I said, she gets to a place that she wants to mark, but her bladder's empty and she might get one drop out. I said, but that's about it. And she says, then there's nothing you could have done. I says, except for this drunken walking thing. And I said, but what was interesting is I had 3 people in the last few days that have told me that it was a bladder infection, or to check her bladder, was it a bladder infection? I said, she's peeing fine. And so, oh, okay. And she was. I mean, she never strained to pee or anything like that. But now I know to be more cautious and look out for it. And I said, but what was interesting is when I cleaned her ears out, I got a lot of stuff out of there, and that set her right for a couple of days. And then she started doing the tripping thing again. So we cleaned her ears out again. And so we were kind of doing it every second day, and she wouldn't have any episodes and stuff. And they were like, well, that's interesting. But they said the UTI can affect the balance, can affect her balance and her equilibrium. But she says there was nothing about the UTI, nothing in her blood work that would even give them a glimmer as to that could possibly be the cause of the seizure. And the vet says it looks like it could be a one-off thing. She says, I'm not putting her on anti-seizure medication unless she has another one. So we just need to monitor her for the next week and see what's going on, and just keep a close eye on her after that. But she says we can see nothing unless it's neurological. They even checked her for West Valley virus, which is running rampant around here in Arizona, and she came back negative for that. I even told her about the incident that had happened with Zephy a couple of weeks ago, which I cannot talk about, unfortunately. And she says, yes, that would have been a very stressful situation and would not have helped in any way, shape, or form. So they took that into account, and they says, even that, but if she does have another seizure, I then have to take her to get an MRI done, and to see if they can, because she says if she does have another seizure, it's going to be something neurological. So you're going to have to take her in to one of the neurological vet places, and where they have an MRI and can run the MRI. And I'm like thinking, that poor dog, because I have had MRIs done as a human, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same sort of MRI but done for a dog. One, they're going to probably have to strap her down like crazy to keep her still, and 2, you got that. If you've ever had an MRI, you know how loud that thing is, with the knock, 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 and very, very loud. I'm just sort of like, I really don't want to have to put her through that unless absolutely necessary. So, but that's Zephy's update. She's doing well. She's recovering well. She's been having a great day. Again, thank you everybody who has been sending me wishes, inquiring about her health, how's she doing, sending prayers and positive thoughts and everything else. It has truly been appreciated. It has definitely been received. And my little angel is doing well. She's recovering well. She hasn't had any issues. And so now I'm going to sign off and go give her so we can both have our advent calendar treats for today. So without further ado, guys, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. Tune in tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific because Nicole is back. We are switching her every second Tuesday to every second Wednesday now. We're going to do Wellness Wednesdays. And when I spoke with her earlier, we're still doing, she's going to be doing a demo in her kitchen where we are going to be talking about home remedies. She's going to, I think it's 3 home remedies she's going to show us for the cold and flu season that's coming up. So she's going to be making 3 home remedies that you can do very easily in your kitchen. And so tune in tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific to find out what home remedies she's going to be doing. And we even came up with another concept that we may do the next time that she's on. So Nicole is back. She'll be back tomorrow night. So come join us at 6 p.m. Pacific. And until then, have a super